Marriage is like a leaky roof. You don't notice the problem until it soaks the bed and ruins everything you thought was solid. I'm Eddie Parker, 39 years old, and I've been patching holes in other people's houses for 15 years, while my own life fell apart one drip at a time. Willow Lake, Maine isn't the kind of place where dreams come true. It's where they come to die slowly, like everything else in this fading vacation town. The lakes are still pretty, sure, but the money dried up years ago when the rich folks from Boston found newer, shinier places to spend their summers. What's left is a collection of working-class neighborhoods, gossip that spreads faster than wildfire, and people like me who fix things for a living because somebody has to keep this place from completely falling down. My wife Jenna sells real estate, which in Willow Lake means she spends most of her time convincing people that a rotting cabin with a view is worth their life savings. She's good at it too, charismatic, attractive, and manipulative enough to make you believe anything she says. I used to think that charm was reserved for her clients. Turns out I was wrong about a lot of things. "Eddie, you're tracking mud again," Jenna called from the kitchen as I walked through the front door, my work boots leaving a trail across the hardwood floors I'd installed myself 3 summers ago. "Sorry, babe." The Henderson job ran late. Their deck was worse than I thought. I kicked off my boots and padded into the kitchen in my socks. Jenna was leaning against the counter, scrolling through her phone with that intense focus she usually reserved for closing deals. She murmured without looking up. "I won't be home for dinner." Client meeting. Again? I opened the refrigerator and grabbed a beer. That's the 3rd time this week. Real estate doesn't stop at 5 o'clock, Eddie. You know that. She finally looked up, and I caught something in her eyes. Irritation, maybe, or guilt. "Mia's at Kayla's house doing homework. Can you pick her up around 8? Our 14-year-old daughter Mia was the one bright spot in my increasingly complicated life. Sharp as a tack and loyal to a fault, she had her mother's intelligence but none of her coldness. Lately, I'd noticed Mia watching Jenna with the same suspicious look I'd been trying to hide. "Sure thing. Which client?" I asked, trying to keep my voice casual. "The Morrison property. Big commission if it goes through." Jenna was already heading for the stairs. "I need to change." I stood in the kitchen, drinking my beer and listening to her heels click across the bedroom floor above me. The Morrison property had sold 2 months ago. I knew because I'd done the inspection repairs myself. That night, after picking up Mia and helping her with algebra homework that made my head spin, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling while Jenna slept beside me. She'd come home around 11, smelling like expensive cologne that definitely wasn't mine, and offering explanations I hadn't asked for. "Dad seems sad lately," Mia said the next morning over breakfast. Jenna had already left for another early client meeting. "Just tired, kiddo. Work's been busy. Mom's been acting weird too." Mia stirred her cereal thoughtfully. "She's always on her phone and she laughs at stuff but won't tell me what's funny. Kids see everything. They just don't always know what it means." "People go through phases," I said, which was the kind of non-answer adults give when they don't want to admit they're as confused as everyone else. The truth hit me like a sledgehammer to the chest 2 days later. I'd come home early to grab my good drill. The Henderson job was turning into a full renovation, and heard Jenna's voice drifting down from our bedroom. She was on the phone, but this wasn't her business voice. "I can't wait until New Year's," she was saying, her tone soft and intimate in a way I hadn't heard in months. "The cabin will be perfect." Just the 2 of us, finally. I stood at the bottom of the stairs, my hand gripping the railing so hard my knuckles went white. "No, Eddie won't be a problem. He's so wrapped up in his little handyman projects he barely notices what's happening right in front of him." The laugh that followed was like ice water in my veins. It was the same laugh she'd given me on our wedding day when I'd promised to love her forever. Apparently, forever had an expiration date. I grabbed my drill and left without making a sound. Some conversations aren't meant to be interrupted. That evening, I did something I'd never done in 15 years of marriage. I went through Jenna's things. Her purse was in the hall closet, and tucked behind her credit cards was a second phone I'd never seen before. The text messages told the whole story, months of them going back to early summer, photos I couldn't stomach looking at, plans for romantic getaways, and a name I recognized, Clint Dalton. Clint Slick Dalton, as everyone in town called him behind his back. Mortgage broker, local big shot, and the kind of guy who wore expensive suits to the hardware store just to remind everyone he could afford them. He drove a BMW, lived in the biggest house on the lake, and had a wife named Kelly who spent her days at the country club pretending her marriage was as perfect as her manicured lawn. The most recent messages were about New Year's Eve. They were planning a romantic getaway at some cabin upstate. Jenna had told Clint she'd handle me, make sure I was out of the picture. I sat in my workshop until 3 a.m, drinking beer and reading every single message. By the time I was done, I felt like I'd been gutted with my own tools. The next morning, Jenna was humming in the shower. Actually humming, like she didn't have a care in the world. I was thinking, I said when she came downstairs, maybe we should do something special for New Year's. It's been a while since we had a real celebration. She froze with her coffee cup halfway to her lips. New Year's? Yeah. Maybe that new restaurant in Portland. Make a whole night of it. I watched her face carefully. Unless you already have plans? Actually, she said, setting down her cup, I do have plans. Work thing. You wouldn't be interested. Try me. It's complicated, Eddie. My ex-boyfriend from college is going to be there, and you know how people talk in this town. It would just be awkward. I nodded slowly. Right. Wouldn't want people to talk. She kissed my cheek on her way out, and I caught that same expensive cologne from the night before. After her car disappeared down the street, I walked out to my truck and sat behind the wheel for 10 minutes, trying to figure out when my life had turned into a bad country song. Mrs. Harrell, our 70-year-old neighbor who knew everyone's business better than they did themselves, was watering her garden when I finally started the engine. Morning, Eddie, she called out. Jenna's been keeping late hours lately. Hope everything's all right. Everything's fine, Mrs. Harrell. Just busy season. She nodded, but her eyes said she didn't believe me any more than I believed myself. That afternoon, I installed a security camera in our driveway. Told myself it was for protection, but I knew better. I was gathering evidence for a war I didn't want to fight but couldn't avoid. The camera caught Clint's BMW pulling into my driveway that very night, 2 hours after I'd left to pick up Mia from basketball practice. Turns out you can't fix a marriage with duct tape, but you can definitely fix a cheating lover's tires. That particular piece of wisdom came to me at 2 a.m. while I sat in my workshop, staring at the footage from my new security camera. There was Clint Dalton, smooth as silk in his $1,000 suit, walking up to my front door like he owned the place. There was my wife, opening that door with a smile I hadn't seen in months. And there they were, embracing in my hallway while my daughter slept upstairs, completely unaware that her mother was busy destroying our family. I'd always been good with my hands, fixing things, building things, making broken stuff work again. But this was beyond repair. This was demolition. You look like hell, Frank Morrison said when I showed up at his garage the next morning. Frank was my oldest friend in Willow Lake, a retired cop who'd seen enough human garbage to fill a landfill, but somehow still believed in doing the right thing. Didn't sleep much. Jenna keeping you up? Frank wiped his hands on a greasy rag and studied my face. Or keeping you awake for other reasons? Frank had always been too smart for his own good. It's what made him a good cop and an even better friend. She's having an affair, I said, the words tasting like sawdust in my mouth. Frank set down his wrench. You sure? I pulled out my phone and showed him the security footage. Frank watched in silence, his jaw getting tighter with each passing second. That son of a bitch, he muttered. In your own house. Gets better. They're planning a New Year's getaway. Some romantic cabin retreat while I sit at home like an idiot. What are you gonna do? That was the question, wasn't it? What does a man do when his world falls apart? Roll over and take it? Lawyer up and fight for scraps? Or get creative? I'm gonna get dirty, I said, but smart. Frank grinned. Now you're talking my language. The plan started simple. I bought a cheap GPS tracker online and stuck it to the underside of Jenna's car. If she was meeting Clint, I wanted to know where and when. Knowledge is power, and I was feeling pretty powerless these days. The tracker led me to Clint's lake house 3 times that week. Each time, I parked down the road and watched through binoculars as my wife played house with another man. The 3rd time, I brought my camera. The photos weren't pretty, but they were clear. Clint and Jenna on his deck, sharing wine and kisses like teenagers. Jenna wearing a dress I'd bought her for our anniversary. Clint's hands in places that used to be mine. I left a note on Clint's BMW windshield. Congrats on the upgrade. Hope the leather seats are comfortable. A concerned neighbor? Childish? Maybe. But it felt good to let them know they weren't as sneaky as they thought. The real humiliation came 2 days later at Mia's school pickup. I was waiting in the parent line when Clint's BMW pulled up behind me. He got out of his car and walked over to my truck, tapping on the window with that smug smile I'd grown to hate. Eddie Parker, right? He said when I rolled down the window. I think we need to talk. About what? About boundaries. And respect. And knowing your place. Other parents were starting to stare. I could see Mrs. Henderson from the PTA craning her neck to get a better view of the show. My place? Look, buddy, I get it. Nobody likes change. But sometimes people grow apart, you know? Sometimes they find something better. Clint leaned against my truck like he owned it. The mature thing is to step aside gracefully. The mature thing? Jenna deserves better than this. He gestured at my work clothes, my beat-up truck, me. She deserves someone who can give her the life she wants. I could have punched him. Should have, maybe. Instead, I smiled. You're absolutely right, Clint. Jenna deserves exactly what she's got coming to her. He looked confused, like he'd expected me to crumble or beg. When I didn't, his smile faltered. Good. I'm glad we understand each other. Oh, we do. Perfectly. Mia climbed into the truck a minute later, chattering about her day while Clint drove away in his shiny BMW. She didn't ask about the conversation, but I caught her watching me in the rearview mirror with those sharp eyes that missed nothing. Dad, she said as we pulled into our driveway, are you and Mom getting divorced? The question hit me like a punch to the gut. Why would you ask that? Because you've been sad and Mom's been weird, and there's something wrong but nobody will tell me what it is. I turned off the engine and looked at my daughter, really looked at her. She had Jenna's intelligence but my stubbornness, and she deserved better than the mess her parents had made. I don't know, kiddo. Maybe. She nodded like she'd been expecting that answer. Will I still get to live with you? Always. No matter what happens, you'll always have me. That night, after Mia went to bed, I sat in my workshop and planned my revenge. Not the hot-blooded, stupid kind that lands you in jail. The cold, calculated kind that ruins lives slowly and completely. Clint Dalton thought he was better than me because he wore expensive suits and drove a fancy car. He thought he could take my wife and humiliate me in public without consequences. He was about to learn how wrong he was. Time to get your hands dirty, but not bloody. That's what Frank had said, and the more I thought about it, the more sense it made. Clint Dalton was the kind of man who cared more about his image than his integrity. Attack the image, and you attack the man. I started with his precious BMW. Sugar in the gas tank is a myth. It doesn't actually damage the engine. But a handful of mothballs in the gas tank? That'll make a car run like garbage and smell even worse. I waited until 3 in the morning, then took a walk through Clint's neighborhood with a pocket full of mothballs and a long funnel. The next morning, I was installing new gutters on the Miller house when I heard the most beautiful sound in the world, Clint's BMW coughing and sputtering like a dying animal. He was supposed to show $1 million property to some investors from Boston, but instead he was standing on the side of Route 9 while his car belched black smoke and reeked like a chemical fire. Mrs. Miller, who'd been watching the whole thing through her kitchen window, shook her head sadly. That poor man. Such a nice car, too. Real shame, I agreed, trying not to smile. But the car was just the opening act. The real show started when I called Kelly Dalton. I'd done some work on the Dalton house 2 years ago, fixed their deck after a winter storm, and Kelly had been nothing but kind to me. She'd made me lunch, asked about Mia, and treated me like a human being instead of hired help. She deserved to know what kind of man she was married to. Kelly? It's Eddie Parker. I did some work on your deck a while back. Of course. Eddie, how are you? How's Mia? We're fine, thanks. Listen, Kelly, this is awkward, but I thought you should know. I've been seeing Clint around town with my wife Jenna. A lot. And not in a business way, if you know what I mean. The silence on the other end of the line stretched for what felt like forever. Are you sure? She finally asked, her voice small and broken. I'm sure. I'm sorry, Kelly. I really am. She hung up without saying goodbye. 2 hours later, half of Willow Lake was talking about the scene at Murphy's bar. Kelly Dalton had walked in during happy hour and found Clint having drinks with Jenna. The slap heard round the world, Mrs. Harrell called it later. Kelly had called Clint every name in the book, thrown her wedding ring at his head, and stormed out while the entire bar watched in stunned silence. Jenna came home that night with fire in her eyes and accusations on her lips. What did you do? She demanded, cornering me in the kitchen while I made Mia's school lunch for tomorrow. Made a sandwich. Want one? Don't play dumb with me, Eddie. Kelly Dalton knew things, specific things, and you're the only one who could have told her. I looked at my wife, really looked at her, and tried to remember when I'd fallen in love with this person. She was still beautiful, still charismatic, but there was something cold and calculating in her eyes that I'd never noticed before. Or maybe I just hadn't wanted to see it. Kelly deserved to know, I said simply. You had no right. I had every right. Just like I had the right to know that my wife was screwing around with Slick Dalton in our bed while our daughter was at school. Jenna's face went pale. How did you... Security camera. Amazing what you can see when you're actually looking. She sat down hard in one of the kitchen chairs. Eddie, I can explain. No need, I've got hours of footage, very educational. It's not what you think. It's exactly what I think. The question is, what are we going to do about it? Jenna straightened up, and I saw the real estate agent mask slide back into place. We're adults. We can handle this maturely. Divorce doesn't have to be ugly. You're right. It doesn't have to be. She looked relieved, like she thought I was going to roll over and make this easy for her. But it's going to be, I added. The next phase of my plan targeted Clint's business. Mortgage brokers live and die by their reputations, and Clint's was about to take a serious hit. I'd done work for half the people in town over the years, and I'd heard stories. Clint had a habit of steering clients toward deals that benefited him more than them. He'd pushed adjustable-rate mortgages on people who couldn't afford them, collected kickbacks from certain lenders, and generally operated in that gray area between legal and ethical. I made some phone calls, asked some questions, did a little digging. Then I made an anonymous call to the State Banking Commission. While that investigation got started, I moved on to more immediate concerns. Clint's lake house had a beautiful dock, custom-built, expensive as hell, and his pride and joy. He loved to show it off to clients, host little parties where he could play the big shot. Unfortunately, Docks require regular maintenance, especially in Maine winters. Ice damage, rotting supports, loose bolts, all kinds of things can go wrong if you're not careful. I waited for a night when I knew Clint and Jenna were together, the GPS tracker was still working perfectly, and took a boat ride across the lake. A few loosened bolts here, some strategic cuts in the support cables there, and Mother Nature would do the rest. The dock collapsed 3 days later, right in the middle of a client meeting. Clint and 2 potential buyers ended up in the lake, along about $50,000 worth of custom woodwork. Nobody was hurt, but the video someone took with their phone ended up on the local Facebook group within an hour. I may have shared it a few times myself. "You're enjoying this too much," Frank warned me when I showed him the video for the 3rd time. "Am I? My wife's been lying to me for months. Her boyfriend humiliated me in front of half the school. And now they're both acting like I'm the problem." I took a long drink of beer. "I'm just getting started. Just remember, the goal is to win, not to become the kind of man you hate." Frank was right, as usual. But watching Clint Dalton's perfect life fall apart piece by piece was the first thing that had made me smile in months. The final move in Phase 1 was the most personal. I'd found out through Mrs. Harrell's gossip network that Clint had been telling people around town that I was unstable and potentially dangerous. He was setting up a narrative where he was the innocent victim and I was the crazy husband who couldn't handle losing his wife. To a better man. Time to flip that script. I printed out every text message from Jenna's secret phone, every photo, every detail of their affair, including some things that would make a sailor blush. Then I put it all in a manila envelope and mailed it to Jenna at her real estate office. The return address said, "From someone who cares about the truth." She opened it in front of her entire office staff. Small towns are like aquariums. Everything that happens gets magnified, and there's nowhere to hide when the water turns toxic. By the time Jenna's office saw those photos and text messages, the whole town was buzzing with the kind of gossip that destroys lives and ends careers. Ruby Martinez and Tessa Chen had been Jenna's best friends since high school. They'd been her bridesmaids, Mia's godmothers, and the first people she called when she needed support or advice. They were also the biggest gossips in Willow Lake, which meant that when they turned on you, everyone knew about it within hours. I was replacing a water heater for old Mr. Peterson when Ruby called. "Eddie? It's Ruby. We need to talk." "About what?" "About what Jenna's been doing. Tessa and we had no idea. If we'd known, we never would have covered for her." That stopped me cold. Covered for her how? The girls' nights, the business trips, the times she said she was with us when she was really... Ruby's voice trailed off. "We thought we were helping a friend. We didn't know we were helping her cheat on you." "Where are you now?" "Murphy's bar. Can you meet us?" Murphy's was packed when I arrived, which was unusual for a Tuesday afternoon. But then I realized why. Half the town was there to watch the show. Ruby and Tessa were sitting in a corner booth, looking like they'd been crying. "Eddie, we are so sorry," Tessa said before I'd even sat down. "Jenna told us you two were having problems, that you were growing apart. She made it sound like the marriage was already over. She used us," Ruby added, her voice bitter. "Made us lie for her, made us part of this mess. And now everyone thinks we knew what she was doing. Did you know about Clint specifically?" They exchanged a look. "We suspected," Tessa admitted, but she swore it was just friendship. Said he was helping her with some business deals. "Some business deals," I muttered. "The whole town's talking, Eddie. About the photos, the messages, everything. Jenna's clients are canceling left and right. The real estate office is in chaos. That should have made me feel better, but mostly, I just felt tired." "What about Clint?" "His wife cleaned out their bank accounts and moved back to her mother's house in Portland," Ruby said. "Word is she's filing for divorce and going after everything he's got. And the banking commission is investigating his business," Tessa added. "Someone filed a complaint about his lending practices." I tried to look surprised. Really? Eddie. Ruby leaned forward. We want to help. Whatever you need, whatever you're planning. I'm not planning anything. I'm just trying to protect my daughter and figure out how to move forward. That was mostly true. Phase 2 was already in motion, but I didn't need Ruby and Tessa knowing the details. The Willow Lake Harvest Festival was this weekend, the biggest social event of the year. Everyone would be there. Families, local businesses, politicians, and of course, all the gossips who made small-town life so entertaining. It was the perfect stage for the next act of my little drama. Jenna had been planning to run a booth for her real estate office, but given recent events, I doubted she'd show her face. Clint, on the other hand, was too arrogant to hide. He'd be there, trying to salvage his reputation and convince people that he was the victim in all this. I spent Thursday and Friday making sure everyone in town had heard the real story. Not the sanitized version Clint was spreading, but the truth, complete with details that made people uncomfortable and angry. Mrs. Harrell was particularly helpful. She'd always liked me, and she was appalled by what Jenna had done. By Friday afternoon, she'd told everyone at the beauty salon, the grocery store, and the post office about the affair, the lies, and the way Clint had tried to humiliate me at the school pickup. That poor man, I heard her telling Mrs. Peterson at the hardware store. Working his fingers to the bone to support his family while his wife carries on with that snake Dalton. And in their own house, too, with their daughter sleeping upstairs. The festival was perfect weather. Crisp October air, bright sunshine, and the kind of fall colors that make tourists drive hours just to take pictures. I brought Mia, partly because she loved the festival, and partly because I wanted people to see us together. The devoted father, doing his best to keep his family together despite his wife's betrayal. We were sharing a funnel cake when Clint appeared. He looked like hell. His usually perfect hair was disheveled, his expensive clothes were wrinkled, and there were dark circles under his eyes that no amount of cologne could hide. "Eddie," he said, walking up to our picnic table like he had every right to interrupt our father-daughter time. "We need to talk." "Do we? This has gone far enough. The pranks, the phone calls, the harassment." "Dad," Mia interrupted, "who is this guy?" "Nobody important, kiddo. Just someone who's been bothering our family." Clint's face flushed red. "Bothering your family? You're the one who's been stalking me, vandalizing my property, ruining my business." "I've been protecting my family from a man who thinks he can take whatever he wants without consequences." By now, people were starting to stare. I could see phones coming out, people positioning themselves to get a better view of whatever was about to happen. "You want to know about consequences?" Clint stepped closer, his voice rising. "You're about to learn what happens when you mess with someone who has real power in this town." Real power? I stood up slowly, using my full height advantage. Clint was maybe 5'8" in his expensive shoes. I was 6'2" in work boots, with 15 years of construction work behind me. "You mean the power to seduce other men's wives? The power to break up families? That kind of power? I didn't break up anything that wasn't already broken." "No, you just took advantage of it, like the parasite you are." Clint swung at me then, a wild, desperate punch that I saw coming from a mile away. I caught his wrist easily, twisted it just enough to make him wince, and held him there while half the festival watched. "Don't," I said quietly. "You've already embarrassed yourself enough." I let him go, and he stumbled backward, nearly falling over a trash can. The crowd was dead silent, waiting to see what would happen next. "This isn't over," Clint said, trying to salvage some dignity. "Yes, it is. You just don't know it yet." He stalked away, and the crowd slowly dispersed, but I could hear the whispers starting. By tonight, everyone in town would know that Clint Dalton had tried to start a fight with me and ended up looking like a fool. "Dad," Mia said when we were alone again, "that was awesome." "Violence isn't awesome, kiddo. You didn't hurt him. You just stopped him. There's a difference." My daughter was growing up fast, maybe too fast. We were getting ready to leave when Jenna appeared. She looked as bad as Clint, tired, stressed, and desperate. She'd lost weight, and her usually perfect makeup couldn't hide the strain around her eyes. "Mia, honey, can I talk to you for a minute?" "I don't think that's a good idea," I said. "She's my daughter too, Eddie." "Is she?" "Because lately, it seems like you've been too busy to remember that." Jenna's face crumpled. "Please, I just want to explain." "Explain what? How you've been lying to her for months? How you brought your boyfriend into our house while she was sleeping upstairs? How you were planning to abandon us both for a romantic getaway?" People were staring again, but I didn't care. I was done protecting Jenna's reputation. "It wasn't supposed to happen like this," she said, tears streaming down her face. "How was it supposed to happen? You and Clint were going to ride off into the sunset, and Mia and I were just going to disappear? I want to come home. I want to fix this. Too late for that. Please, Eddie. I made a mistake. You made a choice. Every day for months, you made the choice to lie to me, to betray our family, to humiliate me in front of the whole town. Those weren't mistakes. They were decisions. Mia had been quiet through this whole exchange, but now she stepped forward. "Mom," she said, her voice steady and mature beyond her years. "I want to live with Dad." Jenna looked like she'd been slapped. "Honey, you don't understand. I understand plenty. I understand that you've been lying to us. I understand that you hurt Dad. And I understand that you chose someone else over your own family. That's not true. It is true. And now you want us to feel sorry for you because it didn't work out the way you planned." Jenna looked at me desperately. "Eddie, please, don't turn her against me. I didn't turn her against you. You did that all by yourself." That night, after Mia went to bed, I sat in my workshop and planned the final phase. Clint had threatened me in public, which meant he was desperate. Desperate people do stupid things, and stupid things create opportunities. I didn't have to wait long. The storm hit Willow Lake like the wrath of God, one of those October nor'easters that remind you why the early settlers thought this place was cursed. Wind howled through the trees, rain hammered against the windows, and the power flickered on and off like a strobe light. It was the perfect night for desperate people to do desperate things. I was in my workshop, pretending to organize tools while actually waiting for the inevitable. The GPS tracker on Jenna's car showed she was at Clint's house, probably planning their next move. They'd been backed into a corner, their reputations destroyed, their social circles collapsed. People like that don't just accept defeat, they lash out. Mia was upstairs doing homework, safe and warm and blissfully unaware that her world was about to change forever. I'd made sure all the doors were locked, all the windows secure. The security cameras were recording, the motion sensors were armed, and my phone was charged and ready to call for help if things went sideways. At 11:30, the motion sensor in my driveway chimed. I checked the camera feed and saw two figures in dark clothing moving toward my workshop. Even in the rain and darkness, I recognized Jenna's walk and Clint's expensive jacket. They thought they were being sneaky, but the infrared cameras caught everything. Clint had bolt cutters and what looked like a crowbar. Jenna had a flashlight and a canvas bag that probably contained whatever evidence they thought they needed to destroy. I texted Frank, "They're here. Call the cops in 10 minutes. Then I turned off the workshop lights and waited. They came through the side door, the one I'd deliberately left unlocked. Amateurs always go for the easy option. I heard Jenna whisper something about finding my computer, my files, anything that could be used against them in a divorce. "This is insane," Clint was saying as they fumbled around in the darkness. "We should have just left town." "With what money?" Jenna snapped. "You're broke, remember? Your wife cleaned you out. Your business is under investigation, and nobody in town will even look at you. That's his fault. All of it. No, it's your fault for being careless. It's my fault for trusting you. And now we're here, breaking into my own husband's workshop like common criminals. I flipped on the lights. They froze like deer in headlights, Jenna holding my laptop, Clint standing over my filing cabinet with the crowbar raised like a weapon. For a moment, nobody moved. "Well," I said, stepping out of the shadows, "this is awkward." Clint recovered first, raising the crowbar higher. "Stay back, Eddie. We're just here to get what belongs to us." "What belongs to you?" "In my workshop? In my house?" I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You really are delusional." "The photos," Jenna said desperately. "The recordings. The files you've been using to destroy our lives. We want them gone." "Our lives? Since when do you have a life together? Last I checked, you were both homeless, broke, and unemployable." Clint took a step toward me. "You think you're so smart, don't you? The working-class hero, getting revenge on the people who wronged him. But you're just a loser who can't accept that his wife found something better." "Something better?" I gestured at him, soaking wet, desperate, holding a crowbar in a room full of power tools. "This is better? I can give her things you never could. Experiences, opportunities, a real life. You can't even give her a place to sleep. Your wife kicked you out, remember? Your business is finished. Your reputation is garbage. What exactly are you offering her?" Jenna set down the laptop and stepped between us. "Stop it. Both of you. This isn't helping anyone." "You're right," I agreed. "This isn't helping. But it is educational." I pulled out my phone and showed them the screen. "Live streaming to my security company. They've been watching this whole conversation, and the police are already on their way." Clint's face went white. "You son of a bitch. Did you really think I wouldn't be prepared? After everything you've done, everything you've threatened, did you honestly believe I'd just sit here defenseless?" "We weren't going to hurt you," Jenna said quickly. "We just wanted—" "You wanted to break into my home and steal my property, while my daughter was sleeping upstairs. That's called burglary, Jenna. It's a felony." Clint made a desperate lunge toward me with the crowbar, but 15 years of construction work had kept me in decent shape. I sidestepped easily, grabbed a handful of his expensive jacket, and used his own momentum to send him crashing into my workbench. Tools scattered everywhere, and Clint went down hard. "Stay down," I warned him. "The cameras are recording everything, and I'd hate for you to do something else stupid." Jenna was crying now, ugly, desperate sobs that might have moved me 6 months ago. Now they just sounded like the death rattle of a marriage that had been poisoned from the inside. "Eddie, please. We can work this out. We can all just walk away from this." "Walk away? Like you walked away from our wedding vows? Like you walked away from our daughter? Like you walked away from 15 years of marriage for a few months of excitement with a man who can't even afford his own apartment anymore? It wasn't supposed to be like this. No, it was supposed to be easy. You were supposed to get your divorce, take half my assets, get custody of Mia, and ride off into the sunset with Prince Charming here. But you got greedy, you got careless, and now you're both paying the price." Sirens were approaching. Frank had called in the cavalry. Through the workshop window, I could see red and blue lights cutting through the storm. "Last chance," I told them. "You can leave now, disappear into the night, and maybe salvage what's left of your pathetic lives. Or you can stay here and explain to Sheriff Day why you broke into my house with burglary tools." Clint struggled to his feet, his face bloody from the impact with my workbench. "This isn't over." "Yes, it is. You just haven't figured it out yet." The police burst through the door, Sheriff Day and 2 deputies, all business and no patience for drama. "Eddie, you okay?" "I'm fine, Sheriff. But I've got 2 burglars here who seem to think they own the place." What happened next was beautiful in its simplicity. The cameras had recorded everything, the break-in, the threats, Clint's attack with the crowbar, all of it. Jenna and Clint were arrested on the spot, read their rights, and led away in handcuffs while half the neighborhood watched from their windows. Mrs. Harrell was going to have enough gossip to last until Christmas. Daddy? Mia appeared at the workshop door in her pajamas, looking small and scared. What's happening? I pulled her into a hug. It's over, kiddo. It's finally over. Is Mom going to jail? I don't know. Maybe. Probably. She was quiet for a long moment. Good. That surprised me. Good? She hurt you. She hurt us. And she was never going to stop until someone made her stop. My 14-year-old daughter was wiser than I'd given her credit for. The next morning, the whole town was buzzing with the news. Jenna Parker and Clint Dalton arrested for burglary. The affair, the divorce, the public humiliation, it all made sense now. The wronged husband had gotten his revenge, and justice had been served. I was replacing a broken window for the Hendersons when Ruby called. Eddie, I just wanted you to know everyone's talking about what happened last night, about how you handled everything. And they're saying you did exactly what any real man would do. You protected your family, you stood up for yourself, and you didn't let them get away with it. I just did what I had to do. No, you did more than that. You showed this whole town that actions have consequences, that you can't just destroy people's lives without paying a price. That afternoon, Frank stopped by with a six-pack and a grin. So, he said, settling into a chair in my workshop, how does it feel to be the most popular man in Willow Lake? Weird. I never wanted to be popular. I just wanted my family back. You got your family back. Mia's safe, Jenna's out of your life, and Clint's finished. The banking commission suspended his license pending investigation, his mortgage company fired him, and word is he's leaving town. What about Jenna? Pleaded guilty to avoid trial. Probation, community service, and she lost her real estate license. Ruby told me she's moving back in with her mother in Portland. I nodded. It was better than she deserved, but it was enough. You know what the best part is? Frank continued. You did it all legally. No violence, no illegal activity, no crossing lines you couldn't come back from. You just exposed the truth and let the consequences play out naturally. The truth has a way of doing that. Yeah, it does. Especially when it has a little help from a pissed-off husband with a security camera and a talent for creative problem-solving. That evening, Mia and I made dinner together. Nothing fancy, just spaghetti and meatballs, and talked about the future. Where we wanted to live, what we wanted to do, how we were going to rebuild our lives without the toxicity that had been poisoning our family for months. Dad, she said as we cleaned up the dishes, I'm proud of you. For what? For not giving up. For fighting back. For showing me that good people don't have to be victims. I looked at my daughter, smart, strong, resilient, and realized that maybe I'd won more than just a battle against my cheating wife and her scumbag boyfriend. Maybe I'd won the chance to raise a young woman who understood that respect is earned, that loyalty matters, and that sometimes the only way to deal with bullies is to stand up and fight back. 6 months later, Jenna was working as a waitress in Portland. Clint had moved to Florida to escape his debts and his reputation, and I was running the most successful handyman business in 3 counties. Turns out, people like doing business with someone they respect. Mia and I moved into a smaller house on the other side of the lake. Nothing fancy, but it was ours, and it was clean, and it was free of the ghosts that had haunted our old place. We had barbecues with Frank, went fishing on weekends, and slowly built the kind of life I'd always wanted, but never quite managed to achieve. The last laugh at Willow Lake belonged to me, and it was sweeter than I'd ever imagined.